Hello. Welcome to Relationshipwrecked. We've got some exits behind you. You came in one, don't leave out of that one. This bathroom, mixed, unisex. No walking this way. No noise, pagers. If you're on call right now, get out. Come out. Okay, that's settled. Drew and Shane, somewhere back there. Lovely set we got going on. Our play tonight is brought to you by the Natalie P. Chaddock Foundation. Natalie P. Chaddock Memorial Foundation goes to fund a lot of things. Sauce chugging contest was the first one. Now this. Natalie, if you have a couple words, we'd love to hear more about your Memorial Foundation.
It's just an honor to be here at all, Memorial Foundation. Yeah, we're thrilled with where we've come throughout the season. What started as a humble endeavor with the first annual World Championship applesauce chugging competition for men and also women. Something truly noble, a beautiful, full-on McMurdo production, and we're just thrilled and look forward to putting on more philanthropic, humanities-based events in future seasons. So thank you for being here today and sharing in this.
Thank you, Natalie. Evan has really been kicking ass with a lot of the flyers and posters. Also would like to shout out tomorrow's prom flyer, designed by Evan.
Nice job, Evan.
Really happy that computers can create flyers for things made for computers. Deirdre, I saw, she's got the camera for tonight. Thank you. The video camera provided by Julie, who is somewhere back there.
For recreation.
Marissa, who's been advertising the play on the board as you walk into the galley, if you ever look at that thing. And then all of the DAs, not me, I don't have anything to do with this, who have swapped shifts and are working this awful 10 p.m. shift that DAs have to work sometimes. Dee, Deanna, Jessica, and Tony. Scott and Alyssa for providing these blinding lights so I don't have very much stage fright because I think I can see 3 people. And now for the show.
The 10 most relevant clues about the nature of our relationship.
1. You don't usually answer me when I reach out to you.
9. When we sat on that bench wrapped in your blanket, and you schemed about how someday soon we'd get in my car and drive far from this city with both our histories, leaving it behind and moving to places we'd never been before, moving our bodies through spaces where they'd never been, making decisions by choosing left, then right, then straight, and I believed you. I believed that we would do this.
2. We never had sex.
4. I never got to give you the 15-page letter I wrote to you, in which I declared I did not want to fall in love with an idea of you.
And we never kissed.
I wrote it when I was just starting to fall in love with an idea of you.
But
But
once.
We were so wrapped up in each other's starry snow globe eyes that we let our noses rest against each other for 10 minutes while we searched for new universes in each other, but more content than ever to live in this one.
7. Even though we only spent time together that one night at Crystal Lake, the rest of my summer revolved around you. Around whether or not your flirty text would lead to legitimate plans of me taking 3 trains and a bus to show up at your front door wearing my doofiest smile. Around worrying when you were gone from work for more than 3 days. Around rereading all 11 of the cute texts you sent me. Around my closest friends putting their caring palms against my daydreaming cheeks and a silent prayer that you would not destroy me.
3. You've known everyone at the camp we worked at since you were 6. You've only known me for a week. You didn't tell them you liked girls, but you told me.
I'm sorry if I was a threat.
6. The time I came to visit you in the hospital.
Because you asked me to.
You sent me a Facebook message telling me not to come. I didn't get it because I didn't have any reception.
5. That time I visited you in the hospital. Because you asked me to. You hastily introduced me to the other people there, and insisted that I spend the entirety of my visit with them. You did not want me to really look at you, or be alone with you.
8. I despise the fact that your posting on my Facebook profile picture, "You're so beautiful," was an earthquake that knocked over all my filing cabinets. And it took me months of reorganizing all my things back into their places, and maybe it's my own fault for not being prepared enough when I fucking knew I was on a fault line. But how the hell could you post that publicly
for
everyone to see?
10. Your eyes pierced into me, and I swear they must be blowtorches, because before I knew it, my whole body was on fire. And then you watched me burn. And you didn't call 911, and then you walked away.
But don't you know, the most beautiful part of a fire is the dying embers? When they burn and flare and then flatten and sink and smolder in folding waves. But you never stayed to see that part.
Do you remember when you showed me the bruises on your body and I cried as I ran my fingers over them? While you were gone, my skin slowly started to bruise in the exact same spots. But I never even noticed them developing because I was squinting so hard, searching for you everywhere. And by the time I looked down at my watch to count exactly how many moments it had been since I'd last seen you, my own skin was splotched with eggplant. And even though you finally answered when I reached out to you for help this time, I wish I had just kept quiet. I don't know if I imagined it or not. Maybe my skin was never purple at all.
I'm 12 years old, learning that I can carry a canoe on my shoulders down a winding wooded path. Sometimes I can find a natural pose for a rest, and sometimes there's another person on the trail and I can ask for help. But sometimes all I can do is shout, fuck, 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 until I get to the end and I can flip that beast back down into the water where it belongs, god damn it. This is a trail note written by my mother to be opened sometime on my 50-day canoeing trip, where I guided 4 teenage girls through the Canadian Arctic along the Kazan and Kunwak rivers. My mother guided the same trip, but on different rivers 35 years prior. And since I was a little kid, I knew I wanted to be a femme du Nord, a woman of the North. I was really lucky to grow up with countless kick-ass, feral female role models, led by my mom, a public school physics teacher. She may not have always known how to talk the talk of like intersectional feminism and stuff, but she certainly could walk the walk. And by walk, I mean flipping a goddamn canoe over her head. My mom and I have never really been on trail together, but Sigurd Olson says, when a person is part of their canoe, they're a part of all that canoes have ever known. She encouraged me to go on my first real backcountry canoe trips as a tween, where I first met myself on the Portage Trail. And she supported me through my wilderness expeditions as a teenager, where I heard the paddles' whispers. and accepted my alternative post-collegiate lifestyle as a starving but hydrated canoe guide. And finally, at my 5th year of leading trips, she embraced me as a fellow leader of the trip called Femmes du Nord. Earlier that year, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she was to start chemo right before I traded civilization and communication for personal growth and endless worry. She insisted that I still lead the trip because so much of her and me and our relationship is in the glide of a canoe across the lake, in the swirls in the current off the paddle, the belting of folk songs into the expanse, helping others recognize their strength and capabilities. So I kept the trip. I just hoped that I'd be half the guide that my mother was. Her campers from that trip are in their 50s now, and they still speak of how empowering her leadership was, and how she guided with a quiet strength and patience, and her goofiness made them feel comfortable and confident at an age in their lives when those feelings are often scarce. With this piece, I endeavored to express my relationship with canoeing, but it so encompasses my whole world. It's about my history and my family and my growth, my treasured friendships, history of my beloved homeland, including colonialism and privilege, the earth and water and people and animals, youth development in our society and our future. Canoe trips showed me my grit and tenacity and taught me acceptance and also resourceful problem solving. And in my mind, canoeing illustrates love. So this is the trail note that my mom read to me to be opened sometime over the summer of 2015. Dear Ketula, I'm writing this as you pack, filled with a variety of emotions. Joy, because this is a great adventure, one you've been preparing for your whole life. Worry, because I'm your mom, and that's what moms do, and I'll not truly breathe free until you return safely. Jealousy, just a little, because it used to be me heading off to adventure. Respect, because you're growing up to be an awesome young woman. Pride, because a part of me goes with you, and I promise that part of me won't end. I know there's a lot of friction these days, but I believe that's the separation phase we're in. Otherwise it'd be too hard to leave, and leave you must. So savor every moment and come back and tell me about it, because I want to know you. And then in return, I can tell you some of my stories, all the mistakes you want to hear about. This is a great opportunity, and I'll be thinking about you every day. I wish for it to be the best. I love you, Mom. Bell Hooks says, love is an action, never simply a feeling. It's a verb, not a noun. And that's why we canoe.
Seemed like such a good idea at first, but as time wore on, you became more and more of a disappointment. Stopped being enjoyable and turned into more work than you're worth. Try to rationalize it. Maybe it's not your fault. You're under a lot of demands. There were lots of talks of ways to make it better. We made changes. I put in extra time. We hoped for the best. But after all the effort I put in, the name calling, and I'm not too ashamed to admit, some tears of frustration, I left here with a really bad taste in my mouth. We had our problems last season, and I wanted to forget you. I planned on ignoring you once I got back. But then there you were, all shiny and new. New season, new hopes. Things started out great. I could barely remember all the issues we'd had before. Friends who didn't return asked about you, and I assured them things would be better this time around. Should have known better. I've always been way too forgiving. Only a few weeks went by before the problems just crept right back in. You're great and wonderful one moment, and then just 3.5, 4 minutes later, things are crumbling. Trouble is you're addictive. I find myself waking up in the mornings craving you. The taste, your warmth, the taste of you on my lips. And it's game over when I've been drinking. I cannot resist you after a few drinks. Why you? Why you? It's not like you're good for me. It's not like I don't have other options. This place is a fucking smorgasbord. I have options. I'm ready to give you up. I'm finally strong enough to say this, and I have to before my heart turns as black as you've become. Waffle World, I'm done!
Dear you, God, I miss you. It's only been a few days, but every moment of every day I've thought about you. I remember the first time I saw you, leaning against the bar at Gallagher's, waiting to order a drink, with your beautiful blue eyes and blonde hair. I never was one to believe in love at first sight, but when you looked at me and smiled, I was seriously ready to reconsider. Oh, that smile. If only I had the words to describe it. It's a smile so purely joyful and beautiful, I'm sure it could bring about miracles. Never in my wildest dreams did I think, after seeing you, that we would ever even talk. But we did. You came right up to me, and we immediately started laughing together, and basically became inseparable by the end of the night. Do you remember dancing together that night? The band was playing, and you asked me if I wanted to dance. Little did you know, dancing with you was the most fun I've had dancing with anyone. I never wanted the music to stop. Then we started hiking uphill loop together almost every day. We talked about everything. We would sit in our spot on the other side of Ob Hill and pretend it was just you and me and the seals and the sunshine. I could sit out there with you forever. I shared more with you on the side of that hill than I've even shared with my best friend. How did you get all that information out of me? I still don't even understand. Then, there was the night you took me up to the band room. As if your good looks and amazing smile weren't enough, you also sing beautifully and play multiple instruments. You sang me a song you wrote, and it was as though you had looked into my soul, and it told you exactly what I needed to hear. That was the night we kissed for the first time. In fact, I kissed you. It was the first time I had ever initiated the first kiss, and as soon as our lips touched, I panicked and pulled away. I wasn't sure you wanted us to kiss, but you opened those blue eyes of yours and pulled me back in. Oh, that band room will never feel the same again. It's not just your stunning looks, beautiful voice, and fantastic dance moves that I miss. It's also your never-ending kindness. In the time we were together, I never saw you say no to helping anyone, no matter how outrageous the request. You're one of those guys everyone knows they can count on. I miss you so much. Then came February. I never hated a month as much as I hate this month, because it took you away from me. The other night, the night before you left, when we spent the whole night not sleeping, I could feel how you felt about me in every kiss and in every touch. Then suddenly it was early morning and time for you to go. You told me you loved me, and I froze. I can't believe I froze. But all I could think of was how we'd only known each other a few months. That's not enough time to fall in love, is it? Just please know that while I froze, all I was doing was listening to my heart scream how much I love you, while my head told me over and over it was too soon. But you never gave me a chance to tell you that. You took my pause as a no, kissed me on the cheek, and walked away. That's why I'm writing you. Because of course I love you. I've loved you from the first time you smiled at me. I know you're going back home, and when I leave, I'm going to be traveling, but I'd rather be with you. Tell me you still love me, and I'll come to you. I don't care. Wherever you are is where I want to be. After 6 seasons, I never thought I'd find someone who made me want to stop coming to the ice and actually settle down. But I did. You are him. I'll leave this place, and I'll never look back. I love you. I love you. Love me.
I'll wait. Relationships are kind of like escalators. So you know when you're on an escalator and you get to the top or bottom where it levels out and you can look down in that crack between the steps and there's that flash of green light? What the heck? Speaking of weird features escalators have, much like a row of bristles on the side down the low floor, cleaning my shoe. You ever see somebody with one side of one shoe that's been recently brushed clean, you can say to them, "Hey buddy, where'd you just come from? The airport or the mall?" A lot of people are scared of riding escalators. And relationships can also be pretty scary. Just another piece of evidence that shows that this is a good analogy. Most people don't stop and think about how escalators actually work. They're always moving at the same speed no matter how much weight is on them. It could be a dozen full-grown adults or one little 60-pound kid. The speed remains the same. It's because when an escalator detects a person standing on it, it increases the torque in the motor that drives the conveyor. Which is good, because who would want to ride an escalator that's all stop and go, hot and cold? You might as well take the freaking stairs. There is a drawback to this design, however. The next time you go to ride an escalator, you could be one of the rare instances where somebody falls through and gets caught up in the gears. And as the gears detect the resistance your body is making, they'll compensate by grinding you up even harder. Like a relationship. Speaking of escalators generally, why do we even call them that? Escalators. It's not a very apt description of their function, because they don't escalate you, they elevate you. We should call them elevators. What you're thinking of. Doesn't really have anything to do with relationships, but I thought it was important. Sometimes relationships have moving handrails. In a relationship, if you're not in a hurry, just keep to the right so that those of us that are can pass you on the left. Emergency stop buttons. Don't you wish relationships had those? I love my girlfriend. I guess I picked a bad place to talk about escalators and relationships. Antarctica's not really known for either. Besides the one in 211, I'm not sure there's a single escalator on the continent. Relationships, well, they're a lot like escalators. I mean, elevators, but not the kind you're thinking of.
I'm here to tell you all how proud I am of my best homegirl. We haven't always been close, but we're finally finding our groove, getting to know each other pretty well. She's beautiful, inside and out. Spoiler alert, We're talking about my vagina. Historically, we've had a clunky relationship. I like to think of it as 2 phases. In phase 1, I was the one who was more into it, and she was holding back, for legitimate reasons. I was trying to move too fast. Phase 2, she was full speed ahead, and I was overwhelmed and confused and afraid to trust her. Now we're really listening to each other and moving forward together. I love that girl, y'all. She is the most beautiful, thriving flower you've ever seen or smelled or tasted. Phase 1. Girl had been in hiding for years because, listen, she's seen some shit. There was that whole thing with that dude where he was trying to get all up in her business, like, you're cute, let's hang. And she was like, LOL, no thanks, bye. And he was like, oh, good one, come here. And she was like, WTF, GTFO. He was like, damn, you're hot. And she was like, stop fucking touching me. And then the tampon tragedies. Those are enough to make anyone want to hide forever and never come out. After having gotten one stuck and only been able to get it out after an hour-long bath, I finally got the courage to try it again a year later. My supportive roommates had motivated me, but 8 hours after a successful insertion, I gave it the old tug-tug and she was like, something is seriously wrong. I tried to chill out for the both of us. Girl, we've done this before. Let's take a warm bath. But there weren't any baths. So I amended to, let's take a warm shower and grossly sit on the floor together and try to figure this out. And we tried. And she was like, oh my god, I told you this wasn't working. What are we going to do? I was like, shit, what are we going to do? And she was like, oh my god, you were supposed to be comforting me. What are we going to do? And after a quick Google search, we discovered that what was blocking the tampon was our hymen. I was like, oh my god. And she was like, wait, is that me? Like, is that part of me? And I was like, maybe the best course of action is for me to snip this skin out of the way. And she was like, get those scissors away from me, you psychopath. She was right on that one. She's usually right. I did not snip our hymen. When I did finally free her, 36 hours later, in a bathroom stall on my way to Dublin, I think it was the first time we really loved each other. I mean, not the first time we ever really loved each other. That didn't come until we were 22, and neither did we. But we came to an understanding. We trust and care about each other, and we're going to use that as a foundation to work on a relationship, to move forward together. With all of that in our history, it's understandable that she wasn't ready to jump in head first, even though I wanted to engage with her more. Every time I tried to hook up with people, she would interrupt just when it was starting to get good. Like, nope, system's shutting down, sending you immense pelvic pains to deter you from this touching. And I was like, girl, this is very inconvenient and annoying. When are you going to grow out of this phase? And she was like, this phase is going to be your whole damn life if you don't look me in the eye and acknowledge me and listen to me and listen to what I'm saying, which was a fair point. Phase 1 does end with a lot of journaling and learning to love every single part of my body. Phase 2. She wanted to move faster than I was ready. I had been so overprotective of her for years because of the terror she expressed every time someone came within a foot of her. First time she ever really liked someone, I was the one that pulled her onto the sidelines. She had just met Skylar, who was doing a damn good job, and she was like, this is amazing, we need to shout about it. And I was like, babe, please, no, can you chill? Because my roommate, also a someone named Skylar, was on the other side of the wall. We've got to be cool about this. And she was like, I have been cool about this for 21 motherfucking years. This is living. Woo! And I was like, nope, you're done. You've lost your privileges. Go to your room. And she was like, oh my God, you are such a pussy. And I was like, how dare you use that term to connote weakness and fear, you misogynist. She was like, you don't get to tell me how to use the term pussy. And she's totally right. But if you're not a pussy, please don't use the term pussy to connote weakness or fear. Anyway, she was like, I'm still mad at you. And Skylar was like, are you sure you don't want me to keep going? Another Skylar was still sleeping soundly, despite my fears. And the homegirl was like, you ruined everything. And she was kind of right. I mean, I didn't ruin anything. Maybe she wanted to keep going with Skylar. But if she and I are going to engage in sex stuff, we both need to be on the same page. Both of us or none of us. But I realized I've never done anything for her in her entire life, even though she's been serving me for my whole life. So I thought I'd buy her a thank you present, a gift, a toy, if you will. And that night, after 22 years, she was like, whoa. And I was like, whoa. Then we looked at each other and said simultaneously, that was the most amazing thing ever. And finally we realized we want to make this work. We thanked each other, and we slept very, very well. Now I get to have her be a part of the rest of my world. Now when I fall in love, she's not my dirty little secret. She's an important part of my life, and an important part of me. I finally love her.
I can still taste it. I can still smell it. Thankfully, I'm not it. The moment it touches my tongue, my body recoils, but my mind forces me to take in every last drop. Check my spit. Yep, still some left. Burning. Push it down. Fight the upheaval. Fight the strain. It will all be better in a moment. Instant despise for long-term serenity. Long-term, when you're living from one moment to the next. My first interaction was so foreign, so bizarre. I thought to myself, why would anyone openly accept this into their life? 30 minutes later, I knew why. I knew I belonged. My world wasn't so sharp. My mind wasn't so confused. I found myself in a place where I could finally be whomever I wanted. I could act with courage. I could be a smooth talker. I was loved. Finally. I'd finally found a home. Why did you turn on me? I thought we were going to walk this journey together, hand in hand, me striding in complete assurance, not being dragged face down through shame and ignorance. The longer we were together, the more I thought I knew you, thought you loved me. I was wrong. You pushed me to my limits. You wanted to make me a better man, thought I was a better man. In reality, I was a shred of a human, a shred of a soul, a single fiber of my real form, slowly fading to nothing. I'd become empty. My body rejected the lack of it. My body only wanted life in the form of a liquid that was slowly killing me. I shook my way to her plastic form. I drew in 1, 2, 3 gulps. The burn helped me to know I was alive again. Lay here. Don't move. Let it kick in. Easy does it. My mind a blur. My head thrashed. Thoughts of shame, thoughts of regret. Fear was my only way of life. I gotta get back. I gotta get back to that first time. Acceptance of death was the norm. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know why the people I'd hurt and embarrassed still participated with me. They didn't. I lost. Lost. There were no more wins. Just a slow spiral till I could finally escape to death. That would be the win. The bottle didn't kill me no matter how much I pleaded. It dragged me on, preying on me, telling me how much better I could be, how much better I am, how much more fun I was to be around, believing a false hope that tomorrow would be a new day. That day never came.
So you may all remember me from such performances as earlier this evening. Okay. So I had just ruminated on canoeing and a touching letter that my mother wrote me before I went on this epic journey. And now I'm going to read the letter that my father wrote to me before the very same trip. And just to like paint a picture, my dad looks like a white Neil deGrasse Tyson / tall Danny DeVito / if you're from the greater Twin Cities metropolitan area, he looks like Dick Enrico from the second Game of He also has atrocious handwriting. Let's see, can you read that? No, I didn't. So I decided to type it, but he used like an equally illegible type font. It's all caps, molded, and there's like flourishes on it. Okay, so, dear Caitlin. All right, so when I was a kid, he would write to me at camp, and he'd always write, Dear Caitlin, like D-E-E-R, Caitlin, with antlers on it. So, okay, Dear Caitlin, or should I say Caribou Ketula, because I was in the Arctic. So you see what he did there? Or Boo Cat to save space. And from then on, my campers on the trip called, like, exclusively referred to me as Boo Cat, and they still do. All right, I hope you're having a transformational experience that does not involve being transformed into poop by a bear's stomach. We will be watching the weather up north and pray that you get a little global warming to open the rivers and make your travels easier. I'll do my part by taking Mondays off for vacation so Mom and I can spend some time on the lake, eat Fletcher's Monday $4 hamburger specials, and burn lots of fuels. Yay, hydrocarbons. Melt that ice. He just like has to poke. I expect you're all sporting the pinnacle of Arctic fashion. You know, that shimmering, vibrant blanket of mosquitoes on every millimeter of your body. At least mosquitoes are religious, and there's 8 ellipses. At least mosquitoes are religious, ... They prey on you. Mom is determined to not let the chemo slow her down much. Been trying to get her to take it easy, but it's in her nature to overschedule herself. People usually figure out what's best. Some need to stay really busy and some need to scale back. I'll be there for her and help her get past this. Genuine sentiment. Really sweet. If I was in her situation, I would probably want to lay in my kennel and not be bothered. Followed by a dog reference. Dogs, dogs, dogs! So not only is he like great at transitions, but also if you thought I was obsessed with dogs. Alright, so Katniss, Flatness, and Horsey. My parents' dogs at the time were named Katniss, Kodiak, and Colby. Kodiak's a flat-coated retriever, so my dad calls him Flatcoat, or Flatness to make it easier for everyone, because it rhymes with Katniss. Colby was a Keyshound, which my dad calls Cheese Hounds, so like Colby. And then from there, he called him Coal Horse, because that makes sense. And like to shorten it up, it's Horsey. Dogs, dogs, dogs. Katniss, Flatness, and Horsey will continue to have a parade of foster dogs, spelled D-A-W-G-S, through the house. I just hope we can stop with the border collies. They're the corporate suck-ups of the dog world. All loving and attentive to their masters, but try to trash and take advantage of their coworker dogs. Cut to 4 years later, they've literally started their own border collie rescue. Poor Kodiak, he could slurp a border collie down his gullet like an oyster, but he's too good-natured. You're blossoming into a wonderful, smart, responsible, mature young woman, and I am proud of you. That's actually kind of sweet. I'm glad that you're getting a chance to enjoy unique wilderness experiences and a loosely structured lifestyle before you become fully interfaced with the requirements and responsibilities of society. In a couple of years, the tide will turn and Mom and I will drop out and start sponging off the system. And you will need to be working to pay lots of taxes to support us into a manner in which we would like to become accustomed to living. Love, Dad. That kind of looks more like a marshmallow peep, like the bunny rabbit. Very carefully. It's like you can tell how shaky his hand is. XXOOXO. So that's Brad Hibbs. If I've got my passion for youth development and strength for my mom, then I got my sense of humor and oppositional defiance disorder from my father.
We're gonna do a stretch break. Everyone would stand up.
Cold intermission.
So I decided to make this a bit participatory stretch break in combination with a story. And then I'll have you sit down and then I'll finish the story because otherwise we'll be here for a while. So this story involves your friend and mine, Jimmy T-Rex, aka Party Pants, aka #1 Dad. My friend Esteban, who was paid $15,000 to marry a Vietnamese national. And two guys from Denmark that were in town on, much like extreme sports, graffiti has its own little tourism industry where people from around the world go to other cities and paint transit around the world. So these guys were in from Denmark, and Chicago has a pretty coveted transit system that people like to vandalize. Second to New York, but New York's a little harder to paint. So 2009, I got this. I went to New York and painted my first subway train. And was moving back in Chicago a couple months after coming back from New York, and had called my friend, or the girl I was seeing at the time, Kara, and I was like, "Hey, I'm moving tonight. What's going on? What do you want to hang out?" And she's like, "Yeah, just hang out." I was like, "Okay. Well, what do you want to do? I have a van for my mom."
Yeah.
She was like, "Well, why don't I just come over and we can hang out and then I'll help you unpack tomorrow." I was like, "Okay, cool." So I went and picked her up and then we went back to my house, and I was moving really far across town from her. So we came back over and I got a friend from your friend of mine, Jimmy T-Rex. "Hey, these Danish guys are in town. And you know how to paint the purple on yard." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." He's like, "Can we do that tonight?" I was like, "All right, give me 5 minutes." So, I'm gonna reach to the sky. This one, I can't really do it. I'm gonna reach up. And I have a couple of phone conversations. Call my buddy Pete, who happens to drive the Purple Line trains. And he was like, "Yeah, I got you tonight." I was like, "All right, Pete, whatever, dude. What's the time frame in which we can paint these trains?" And he was like, "Between 1 and 1:45. And I looked at the clock. I'm gonna do one of these. All right, okay, we can get this done. Hey, Kara, like, you know, it's like driving the car. I was like, hey, Kara, do you still want to hang out? Like, what's going on? And she was like, well, yeah, okay, all right, fine. Well, I'll just hang out with your roommate, Dave. And I was like, you sure you want to hang out with Dave all night? And she was like, yeah, Dave's all right. So we get back to my place and like hung out for a little while. Went and picked up your boy Jimmy T-Rex, Esteban, and the two Danish guys, and we went on like this 11-mile drive and went to the Purple Line yard. I think you can sit down. So we get to the train yard, and like the way that the trains have to be parked is like a full line of trains and then two married pairs that have space in between, so there's a pocket and then another train line. So you need to kind of like make sure that that's happening before you paint, otherwise you won't get a good photo if you paint between lines and you're exposed if there's not a train covering you. It's also a really good way for rail yard workers to park the trains in a way that they can swarm you and beat the shit out of you with metal rods. So there's a long history of getting your ass kicked in train yards, and we're like, okay, here we go. The Danish guys up until this point have been really like militant and like methodical in the way that they like have organized paint and have like communicated about painting and have proper respirators, where Jimmy is like drinking a 40 and he's like super nervous and I'm just kind of driving. And Jimmy also has this weird problem where every time he goes and paints, he brings a roll of toilet paper and needs to take a shit. I think it's like a manifesting thing. I don't think he actually has to poop coincidentally every time he paints, but he kind of like, it's like graffiti and poop are kind of the same thing to him. So it's like this little thing. So we get into the train yard and everything is going okay. And like the two Danish guys are like over here and they're like, you know, yelling at each other in Danish, and they have like this like designer spray paint that has like Ferris shaky balls so that you can put like a magnet on it. It doesn't make any noise. Like tossing it to each other and like painting like this, you know, and like tossing paint to each other, and they're doing this whole like piece that goes like end to end with like a character in the middle, and then they are going to submit this whole thing to like a graffiti magazine. And then it was me and Jimmy on a car, and Jimmy's still drinking, and then Esteban like hip hopping over here. And, I'm getting close to done. I have like all these insides and these like funny bubbles and like this drippy shit and like some sprays off and some glare. And I'm looking at like maybe like finishing an outline, and like the train just turns on. So we all like kind of stop at each other and we're like, ow! And we like jump over the wall and reconvene in this thorn bush, and we're like, okay, we're bloody. And I feel my phone vibrate and flip it open and like look at a text from Pete. I'm gonna remind you as a train driver. And it's like, it's all good. There's probably like a 2 and a 4 and a U and a smiley face in there too. And I'm like, okay, what do you think about this? And the Danish guys talk to themselves, and Jimmy and Esteban are like, yeah, let's finish. And I was like, okay, let's go. So we jump back over there and continue finishing. And like I'm done, and I'm kind of sitting and waiting for them to finish, and a rock comes out of nowhere and hits the train. So we jump over the fence, and I like somehow got out first and was like in front of everyone, and like looked behind me, and there's like 2 cops way in the back, and we're like running, and Jimmy's like kind of like slugging along, and the 2 Danish guys are like kind of starting to pass me, you know, typical, and me and Esteban are kind of just like, all right, let's like jump over this tree, and somehow like these woods appear, and we're like in the middle of the woods, and I look back again, and both of the cops have tripped. So we're like, like peace out, get the fuck out of here. We all kind of like split up, and it was like, oh, perfect. Jump over a fence, land in another thorn bush, and I'm like in this person's backyard, and I'm just kind of like waiting. So I text Esteban, the most, you know, like I don't know these Danish guys' phone numbers, and don't hear anything. And I'm kind of like waiting, and the sun is rising, and I can hear the trains starting to run. and I'm like looking, and there's this like family like making fucking coffee in front of me. And I was like, I got my mom's van, and I have to get it back. So I texted Esteban, and I was like, I'm getting the van out of here. You guys are on your own.
Yeah.
He like texts me back, and he's like, it's all good. I'm in a garbage can. It's like, and I was like, okay, I got this. Like I hear some radios in the distance, and I wait for the radio sound to disappear, and I'm like under the van, and I get into the van, and I turn on the van, and I get in the van, and I'm driving. It's like, okay, cool. Following the traffic laws. Still have a driver's license. And like, I kind of get to like, this train yard is actually in like a suburb of Chicago, so I'm like looking at the border of this like suburb, and there is Chicago like right there, you know? And it's like, oh God. Here we go. And I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and there are 2 squad cars that just like saw me and like were like on it. So they were like pull up to either side of me because it's like the road had kind of expanded. It was kind of in the center, and I can see them both like looking at me, and I was like out of like the peripheries, and it was just like driving 24 miles an hour. 24 miles an hour. So they dip back and then turn on the lights. And before I know it, I'm being like dragged out of the car. Like this. Like totally just like arrested. You know, it's like I'll summarize like the more excruciating parts of like the 72 hours that I spent in like 3 different, like a suburban jail, then they transferred me after like a court hearing, like shackled to like 3 people because there was like an odd number of people, but they fucking took my shoes. I didn't have any shoes, and like I had to like sit like on this bus, like it was like a school bus, you know, but there wasn't enough room, so I was like in the aisle. There's an odd number of people, and they can't shackle to you yourself. So you know, like it's like, God, this fucking kid. And then, like, sat in the jail cell. I really got to know this 19-year-old on his second gun charge. Don't remember his name. And then, you know, like, you get to this point where they're like, you know, like free phone calls or whatever. And it kind of looks like the CDC, except for everyone has like a wooden baton. And they're like issuing me this like uniform in like a bag. And they're like, oh, what size are you? And instead of following what size are you with, if you don't like it, then you come back to this counter and we'll exchange it. They just stop and stare at you, and I was like, well, I'm a small. And the guy's like, yeah. Small. And he takes one giant ass step, 4XL. Thanks. Also, the police took my shoes, and he looks at me and was like, okay. And he gives me these like slip-on shoes, and like at this point I had been in some sort of like transferring holding system for long enough to realize that like the prison is owned by a company called Bob Barker, so the shoes have like Bob Barker. Like I put the shoes on, and then I tried these like XXL on, like, you know, like, I don't know if you've seen me in the galley with the pants. Kind of like that. And, like, this dude experiencing delirium tremens over here, and like, all the fucking like police officers are just like laughing at me, and I like kind of just walk into my cell. So then like I get to the phone call, and the phone call has like a sign printed above it, and it's like, calls will be billed at $50 a call, and I was like, oh shit. All right, here we go. And then I call, and I don't get an answer, and was like, well, that was $50. I go back to my cell and sit there for a bunch of meals that are kind of not really like, you know, there's like some veggie egg rolls. There's like some roasted cauliflower, like a rolled hot dog that shows up. And like, you know, just like eat these things and talk to the 19-year-old at the second gun charge who I claim to have known so well but can't remember his name right now. And, you know, finally someone like comes into the cell after who knows amount of time because you can't see the sun. And, and like wintering over here?
McMurdo!
And this dude walks in and was like, Caro. I was like, yeah. Yep, me. He's like, all right. And he like leads me out to this thing where there's another 8 hours of changing like chain link fences and stuff like that. And they're like, someone bailed you out. Sign this. I was like, okay, cool. So I like signed this and I was like, how did this happen? And there was like, here's the credit card information. Credit card with my name on it. I was like, so I get out and they're like, do you need a bus pass? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I get out and then I realized I was like, oh yeah, like I'm like 19 and the cheapest apartment I could fucking find is like 5 blocks away. So I just drew a bus pass and walked home and got back to my room and I was like, man, this is like a total mess. Like my boss is gonna fire me, which he didn't. This dude also paints graffiti. And then I was like, I had this other like gig and it was like, hey, I was like painting graffiti and they were like, oh cool, you can incorporate that into your job. I was like, great. But I walked back into my apartment and like Dave was like having a panic attack and he was like, oh my god, I thought you were dead. I was like, no you didn't. And then like walk into my room and there's just a note on my bed that was like, hope painting was fun. This isn't working out.
I remember the time you taught me to sign steak. We were hanging out at a place you called Chipotle because you'd never heard anyone say it before. Of course, you'd never heard anyone before. It was the first time we'd hung out. I was nervous, but so were you. I didn't know your language and you didn't understand mine. But even though you didn't say it, I understood your promise to help me understand your world one sign at a time. I remember the time you taught me to sign thunder. It was raining so hard, you decided to pull your car on the side of the road. I wanted to go home, but you said, no, wait, listen. Thunder is sound you can feel. You said, if you could close your ears as easily as you can close your eyes, maybe then you'd realize why I run with bare feet, why I laugh with my gut, why I dance with my hands. Movement is the language of the heart. And you took my hand in yours and you placed it against your chest. Thunder is sound you can feel. I remember the time you taught me to sign, I love you. It was a sign I already knew, but I listened as you explained the I, the L, and the Y, and I feigned surprise when you signed, I love you. 3 months in, and I couldn't begin to describe what you had taught me. Not just about words and signs, but about a world of reverberating light in which a body can speak with a soul. 3 months I'd spent every day with you, not something I normally do. Never uncomfortable, but often confused. I'm not vulnerable, I don't open up, but with you, I felt just safe enough. I love you too, I replied, and I did. I remember the time you taught me to sign, falling in love. We were sitting on the couch at your aunt's house an hour out of town. We were watching TV, and in the flickering light of a muted screen, you turned to me and said, I am falling in love with you. Your words hit me like a train, one I should have seen from miles away, but I had stayed in its path. And here now, in the moment of impact, I finally realized what I should have said a long time ago. I said, do you remember the time you taught me to sign best friend? You didn't know it then, but in my head, this was me and this was you. So what I said was true. I don't feel romance, but I still love you. You said, I understand. If this is me, then fuck you, because if you can't care about me after all we've been through, then what you feel is pity. It isn't love. But what I heard was, your friendship isn't good enough. For the first time, I felt you couldn't hear me. I tried to rationalize, I tried to justify, but you just closed your eyes, deaf even to my signs. 3 weeks we didn't speak. 3 weeks we avoided eye contact passing on the street. 3 weeks before you sent me a text asking to meet. You seemed nervous, but so was I. I knew your language and you understood mine, but a new barrier had formed, a new wall to climb. You said, I want to apologize. There's some things I've realized in our time apart. You see, this is me, but this is you. And the skip and the bounce, that's what we just went through. I'm not okay and everything isn't fine, but I know it will be given time. Because even though I'm upset, and even though I'm confused, there's one thing I'm certain of. I care about you. And that was the time you taught me to sign, best friend, I love you.
So in honor of tonight's theme of relationships, I have here all 154 of William Shakespeare's love sonnets, which I will perform for you now. Sonnet number 1. From fairest creatures we desire increase, that thereby beauty's rose might never die, but as the riper should by time decrease, his tender air might bear his memory. But thou contracted to thine own bright eyes, feedest thy light's flame with self-substantial fuel, making a famine where abundance lies, thyself thy foe to thy sweet self too cruel. Art thou now that the world's flesh ornament, and only herald to the gaudy spring, within thine own bud buriest thy content, and tender churl makest waste in Nigarding. Pity the world, or else this glutton be, to eat the world's due, by the grave and thee. Sonnet number 2. When 40 winters shall besiege thy brow, and dig deep trenches in thy beauty's field, thy youth's proud livery so gazed on now will be a tottered need of small worth held. Then being asked, where all thy beauty lies, where all the treasure of thy lusty days, to say within thine own deep sunken eyes, wherein all eating shame and thriftless praise, how much more praise deserved thy beauty's use, if thou couldst answer, this fair child of mine shall sum my count, and make mine old excuse. Proving his beauty by succession thine, this were to be new made when thou art old, and see thy blood warm when thou feelest it cold. Sonnet number 3. I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
I do want to talk a little bit about relationships, though, and how sometimes we don't always pick the best role models for our relationships. So the one good example is Romeo and Juliet, kind of continuing on the Shakespearean theme. Romeo and Juliet is actually really not a very good love story. So well, let's kind of walk through it a little bit real quick in today's terms. So we'll skip all the bits about the families feuding and everything. That makes for some good sword fights, but it's really not relevant to love or relationships, that sort of thing. So the play starts out with Romeo, and he is completely and totally and forever in love with Rosalind. The fuck is Rosalind? We never see her on stage, but he is completely in love with her. So here's Romeo. I am completely and forever and utterly in love with Rosalind, and no one else can ever compare. And then Juliet walks by. I am completely forever and utterly in love with Juliet, and no one can ever compare. So obviously we're already off to a pretty good start. Then after the party where they meet, Romeo follows her back to her house and watches her through the window. And then she stands on the balcony and she says her old Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? And then he reveals himself. I am here. I have been watching you through your window. And Juliet says, oh, isn't that sweet? Some pretty big red flags on both sides. And then after that, there's a bunch of sword fighting, and then Juliet pretends to be dead, and Romeo kills himself, and she kills himself, or herself, and the rest of the story. So basically, what this comes down to, it's the story of two flighty teenagers. Oh, by the way, Juliet is 13 years old. That's mentioned multiple times in the play that she has not yet attained her 14th season. She's 13 years old. So it's basically these two young flighty teenagers who meet at a party. He stalks her, she's okay with that. Then 7 people get killed, and all of this takes place over 3 days. So, instead of Romeo and Juliet, I propose a better example. The better example I suggest is Justinian and Theodora. A true story, this really happened, these are real people. So Justinian, he was the nephew of the emperor. So and since the emperor himself had no children, Justinian was going to be the next emperor. So very, very important, very important sort of person. Theodora, she was an actress from a very young age. And at the time this was going on, actress generally was synonymous with prostitute, and not usually by choice. Usually they were forced into prostitution age 11, 12, thereabouts. Yes, very much so. And so after many, many years of this, by the time that she was about 21, she was able to escape from this forced life of prostitution. And shortly thereafter, she met Justinian. They fell in love immediately, even though they were wildly different social classes. He was going to be the next emperor of the most powerful country on the planet, and she was unemployed at the time. Shortly thereafter, they got married. And, even just that is a very nice little love story. But what gets better is that it wasn't just that they were in love. What's better is the level of trust, of support, of dedication, of compassion that was shared between the two. So shortly thereafter, after they got married, Justinian became the next emperor because his uncle died. And Justinian himself, he trusted her opinion so much on everything. He himself said, I consulted her with her on everything. Before he made any major decision, they talked about it. They discussed it. What's the best course of action for the empire? That sort of thing. They were both widely considered to be very intelligent, very ambitious people, and they also supported each other for everything. Justinian, for example, he redid their entire system of laws for the entire empire. He redid how they structured their laws. Meanwhile, Theodora instituted a number of reforms to improve the lot of women in the empire, like what their life was like. She outlawed forced prostitution. She made rape a capital offense. So she did a lot of great stuff to make life better for the thousands and thousands of women throughout the empire. And meanwhile, they had this deep understanding, and they loved each other, and they supported each other, and it was awesome. The one good example that really kind of sums that all up is the Nico riots. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. But there was, sometimes nowadays you'll see after a sporting event, so one team or the other's supporters will maybe go out and burn some things or, get a little too excited, have a little riot going on. And this is not a new thing. People have been doing this for thousands of years. And this happened this time too. So it was after some chariot racing. The blues and the greens were two competing teams. And after a sporting event, they went out and decided to go burn things. And it just kind of kept going and kept building and it became so destructive and so damaging that they actually started threatening the emperor himself. And Justinian had never encountered a situation like this. He'd never been directly threatened like that before. So he became very much disheartened, he became afraid, he didn't know what to do. So he said, you know what, we'll just leave. Come on, we'll just leave the city, let him have it, and we'll come pick up the pieces later on. And Theodora said, no, we're going to stay here, we're going to sort this out, we're going to work together, and we're going to make this right. She supported him in this great time of need. So that's what they did. They stayed, they were able to get rid of the riot and save most of the city anyway. One part that was not able to be saved was the cathedral. It was one of the largest buildings in the city. That got destroyed. So what they did after this had all been sorted out, Justinian and Theodora got together with all of their architects and their engineers and their advisors and everything, and they planned out this great new monument that they were going to build. And they called it the Church of Holy Wisdom. If any of you have ever been to Istanbul, you'll still see it there. It's called the Hagia Sophia in Greek. And it's still one of the most magnificent monuments anywhere in the world, in my opinion. But it's still there 1,500 years later, thanks to the dedication and the support and the trust between these two people, Justinian and Theodora. So, kind of to sum up, falling in love is kind of the easy part sometimes. But what's really impressive, what makes a relationship worth idolizing is the trust, the support, the compassion, the devotion, that sort of thing. Not the flighty fantasy of a couple of young teenagers. Forget Romeo and Juliet. Remember Justinian and Theodora.
I had never realized I'd been keeping her in a cage. Not until I made my way halfway across the U.S. just to spew every thought I had penned in my brain for the last 3 weeks in one swift conversation. It's hard to explain what really happened. It's hard to explain. It happened over text messages, as everything seems to these days. Her last message showed up to me at 12:46. We were talking about furniture. Fucking furniture. I've read over our last few messages thousands of times, and every time I think about what a waste of fucking brain space the whole conversation was. Why are we talking about, I don't know, something of substance, love, maybe. 12:46. I asked her how she was going to get her couch into her third-story Brooklyn apartment, and I never got an answer. I thought nothing of it, and I went to bed. I woke up the next morning to one of the worst days of my life. Work in the restaurant was normal at first. Tourists came in, they ordered their pancakes and bumbled about the buffalo they'd seen in the park that day. But once the word got out, when the newspaper dropped, this speculation was endless. All she was at that point was this gossip. Did you hear about the employee who fell off the canyon last night? She must have been drunk. I hear she was from Mexico. No, Ecuador. What an idiot. Did she not see the signs? Maybe she couldn't read English. Serves her right. The hate, man, it makes me spin. But I was a part of it. I kept her in a cage. In my head, I'd never take the time to think about who she really was. I was too busy being captivated by her. 6 weeks. That's all it took. 6 weeks and an endless amount of time together. We must have covered hundreds of miles of Yellowstone's hiking trails. And in that time, hundreds of miles of conversation. I never found it so easy to open up to someone like her. She was like an empty well, willing to be filled one bucket at a time with all the shit I had to tell her. Man, she was perfect, beautiful, kind, curious. Perfect? I had her all caged up. I thought I had my head wrapped around who she was. I had gotten to the point where I could talk to her about fucking furniture as if it was something worth our time. When that day was over, when I got done listening to the rants of strangers who knew nothing about her, I went home with a pile of tips as if it were any other day and cried. No, that's putting it lightly. I sobbed and I yelled and I tore apart my room in threads of rage. It was the only thing I felt I had any control over anymore. I hated what the strangers had to say about her. I hated my friends and my co-workers for not knowing what she really meant to me. Damn it, it was impossible to make sense of the whole thing. This is life, and this is everything. This is death, and this is nothing. You're somewhere else now. At the bottom of a canyon. You're floating up into the clouds. But I've got you right here, always. Uncaged. Nowhere else.
Five years old. Love is everywhere, in everything. Plastered across the faces of mommies and daddies everywhere. Bubby and Zadie teach me America the Beautiful because they remember the purple in Purple Mountain Majesty is my favorite color.
6 years old. I spend entirely too much time thinking about what it would be like to kiss Kelly Coleman next to my cubby. 7.
I noticed you sketched your heart into the beginning of a journal. I think it looks like mine.
8. My brother isn't my friend yet, but he cradles my bleeding face in the back seat on the way to the hospital and doesn't let me go even though I'm a broken record yelling, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. Where will you be when you find the monster inside of me? 9 years old.
I fall for my friends, all of them. Write them love poems and valentines and send them in January because the 14th of February comes far too late in the year.
10 years old. The kids who turn into Olympians in gym class, the smelly kid in the front row hidden under his hoodie, the girl who was the lead in the school play but tripped and fell during her biggest song. It's the last time the world would let me love them all without consequence. 11.
I cry when you leave, but resiliently turn every moment thereafter into poetry.
12. The judge informs me that exclusion is not the same as oppression, but my watery, defeated eyes scream over my grown-up handshake, then why do I feel oppressed? So we wandered into the night, because it was too beautiful not to become a part of. 13.
I care only about myself.
14. I care only about sincerity. 15. We burn from both ends. 16.
I recognize my shared humanity. I spend my weekends protesting the Darfur conflict, amplifying the voice that was never allowed at my dinner table. Our bones wrapped in skin are like birthday presents for the Janjaweed.
17 years old. When my mother tripped with my newborn brother in her arms, she twisted her whole body to save his head. Her ankle shattered. Though this was in 1989 and is surely outdated, it is the strategy I invoke to save the lives around me. My mother whispers in my ear, you only have 2 ankles, and I want her to be wrong. Teach me to love fully and sustainably. 18.
I want to shove a rose up your heart.
19. I can love how I want. If it's what life's about, I can fall in love with a boy or a girl or a place or a job or a way of life or maybe just the chance to matter. To stop scrubbing dishes and start a revolution. 20 years old.
Revolution is written on the doorway, not on the periphery like the people I'll soon love. I don't want to give that up. I want to dwell in the space where I'm constantly overwhelmed by the love of new people, people I will soon rent heart space to.
21 years old. I was never interested in the white picket fence and 2.5 children in a dream home on a hill, so I released that like a weather balloon in a contu. I don't believe in the institution of marriage because I don't believe in institutions. I mail back my honeymoon without a return address and trade my picket fence for a picket sign. 22.
I've met shipwrecked mothers that are raising children that look like car accidents, cashing in time on a prayer that they may matter one day.
I want to matter one day. 23. I'm in like with a volcanic heart that stands still, rippled across the Pacific, a rock in the ocean. My mother whispers electric energy. 24 years old.
There's an imaginary line between us that the governments like to call a border. We could build a wall on it, turn it into something that a realist could see.
But we're not wired like that.
We know that walls are only built out of fear.
And you can't hold back the fear without holding back the love. I hope you keep breaking your heart.
My ornament heart, obliterated on the hardwood floor on a Monday morning. It takes a lifetime to piece it back together, but the mosaic I end up with after years of scrambling on all fours for the bits of my former self is breathtaking. As soon as it's back together, every fiber of my being says to throw it back against the wall.
I hope you keep breaking your heart. I am working on allowing the oceans to tear me open. I want to discover the algorithm of my heart. What happens when everything pivots, when I chop off my hair, when I play hopscotch with time zones? I hope you go snorkeling in the Great Barrier Reef. I hope you hold an old person close and let them fall in love with you. I hope you gather a community and build a river. I hope you count the goosebumps on your arm the next time someone kisses your neck. I hope you see that from every hole that is fragmented, a new shape is born. I hope you keep breaking your heart.
In the hours after the late shift.
On a sleepless Wednesday evening.
In the conversations that don't matter until they're over.
In the eyes we forget to make contact with. I hope you keep breaking your heart. I hope you keep breaking your heart.